Hi everybody, in this video we're going to be looking at prime factor decomposition, what it is, what it means, and then we're going to talk about how we can find the highest common factor and lowest common multiple as well by using a prime factor decomposition method. So let's jump straight in. So you need to identify that when the question in the exam says express 120 as a product of its primes, what this means is you are doing a prime factor tree. So you have 120 and you split it. Now remember, you were thinking about what numbers multiply to give you 120. So you could look at multiple things here. You could do 2 times 60, you could do 40 times 3, you could do 12 times 10. It doesn't matter how you start, as long as the two numbers you multiply together give you 120. So I'm going to start with 12 and 10. And then I'm going to break down these two numbers as well, because you only stop when you hit a prime number. 5 and 2 for 10, so 5 times 2 is 10, and then 6 times 2 for 12. Now I know that 2 is a prime, I know that 5 is a prime, 2 is a prime, so I circle them. 6 is not a prime, 3 times 2 gives me 6, and these are both primes. Now if you don't know your prime numbers, the first prime number is 2, it is also the only even prime number. 3 is the next prime number, then 5, 7, 8 is not a prime, 9 is not a prime. 9 is a common one that pupils forget. Remember that 3 goes into 9. Any even number from now on won't be a prime. 11 is a prime. 13. 15's not, because 5 goes into it. 16's obviously even, so 17 is a prime. Nothing else goes into it. 19 is a prime. Remember that 21 is not a prime, because 3 and 7 go into it. 23 is a prime. 25 isn't, because 5 goes into it. 27 is also not a prime, because 9 and 3 go into it. And then 29. So they are your key prime numbers you need to know all the way up to 30. And thinking that in reality the ones you're probably going to be using most are these ones here when you're looking at prime factor decomposition. So from here, all you then need to do is you need to write this out from smallest to biggest. So you go 2, so I'm using that 2 first, times by that 2, times by 2, times by 3, times by 5. Now remember here, always put a multiplication sign between them. It's not a comma, it's not an add, okay? Because basically what we're saying is if I actually work this out, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 3 is 24, and then 24 times 5 gives me 120. The other way you can write this is 2 to the power of 3, because there are 3 2's, times by 3, times by 5. Okay, so that's how you do prime factor decomposition. That's a nice clear method of doing it. If you want to have a practice now, if you can do the prime factor decomposition for, let's go for 210. If you do prime factor decomposition for 210, pause the video, see what you get, and I'll go through it now. So 210 becomes 21 and 10. Now you might have started that as 105 and 2, that's okay. Your answer at the end will be exactly the same as mine. That becomes 5 and 2. So circle those two, and 21 breaks down to 7 and 3, remember. They are all primes, so your answer for 210 becomes 2 times 3 times 5 times 7. So that would be your answer. Okay, let's look at now how we use this method to find the lowest common multiple of 80 and 150, and then we're also going to look at how we can use it for highest common factors. So if you're asked to find the lowest common multiple or highest common factor of two numbers, the first thing you can do is complete your prime factor decomposition for each number. So I take 80 and I take 150 and I complete my prime factor tree for each one. So 8 times 10, 5 times 2, and they're both primes, and then 4 times 2 for 8, and then 4 is 2 times 2. And then you do the same thing for 150, so 15 and 10, 5 and 2, they're both primes, and 15 is 5 and 3. So that's your step 1, which is the same as obviously what we've just done in the previous example. Now what I suggest you do is you write out the numbers in order. So 80 is 2 times by 2, and tick them off as you go, times by 2, times by 2, times by 5, and then 150 is 2 times by 3, times by 5, times by 5. So from this point, now what you need to do is you need to draw a Venn diagram. So I have my first circle, my second circle, making sure there's an overlap, and I put 80 here and 150 here. So these are my two circles. What I'm now trying to do is I'm basically going to look at playing a game of snap. So there is a 2 that matches up in both lists. So 2 goes in the middle. And I look to see if there's anything else that matches up. So 5 is the only thing that then matches up. There's no other numbers that match up in those two lists. So they think about it, the fact that when you circle them both, they merge into one. Then what I do is the leftovers go in the relative circle. So 3 and 5 for 150 and 2, 2 and 2 for 80. What you now need to do to find the lowest common multiple is you multiply all those numbers in the Venn diagram. So I'm doing 2 times 2 times 2, which is those 3 there, times by 2 times by 5, which is the middle section, times by 3 times by 5. Now, you can use a calculator if it gives you quite a long number. It could be that the numbers are quite nice and it comes up in a paper one. You don't need to use a calculator, but I'm going to quickly do it now. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 3 times 5 ends up giving me 1,200. So that is my lowest common multiple. Okay. Now, you need to remember that a multiple is a multiple of that number. So 80, the multiples of 80 are 80, 160, 240, 320. The multiples of 150 are 150, 300, 450. So if you were to do your times tables of 80 and 150, the first one that would show up in both lists would be 1,200, and that'd take you a little bit of time, so it's much quicker doing it this way. Okay, so now for highest common factor. Okay, highest common factor is basically the highest number that goes into both of those numbers. So between 130 and 90, what is the highest number that goes into both? What I suggest you do now is you pause the video, do your prime factor tree for 130 and 90 to make sure you're happy, then do your Venn diagram. So exactly the same process as the first part, but then the second part is a bit different. So pause the video, have a go, and then I'm going to do it so you can check your answer. So 130 breaks down to 13 and 10. 10 breaks down to 5 and 2. These are all primes. 90 breaks down to 9 and 10. Breaks down to 5 and 2. 9 breaks down to 3 and 3. So these are all my prime factors. So 90 is 2 times 3 times 3 times 5. 130 is 2 times 5 times 13. Now you draw your Venn diagram as we did in the previous example. Look at what matches up. So 2 matches up, 5 matches up again. Then with 90, we have a 3 and a 3 left over. And with 130, we have 13 left over. Now, the nice thing about this is we don't have to do loads of complicated maths. When you're looking at the highest common factor, it is just this middle section here that you were looking at. So you're doing highest common factor is the middle, and the middle is 2 times 5, which is 10. So your highest common factor is actually 10 for these two numbers. Hope you found the video useful, and I will see you in the next one.